Hey, what's going on, guys? How's everybody doing? What is up, FAQ&A Thursdays? We are back. We missed a week, actually. Last week, I was on a webinar for a community, so I wasn't able to do FAQ&A because it was at the exact same time. But we're back. I'm going to give a little couple seconds here for people to filter in. I'm just going to make sure that we're up and live on Facebook and everything looks good. Perfect. All right, awesome. So today we are going to talk about workflows versus task boards. And this is something that I haven't really done. I usually talk about either workflows or I'll talk about task boards, but today I kind of wanted to talk about both of them and when is best practice to use either one. Because we do offer task boards, and sometimes that's something that gets overlooked in our system, that we do offer the ability to create job boards for projects. And so if you didn't know that we offer that, we do, and so we'll talk about those today. One of the biggest things as well, too, is that we won't go into too much depth about building workflows or building job boards. This is going to be more for, I have project management things that I need to use, and I don't know if I need to use workflows for this. Do I need to use task boards? What's the best practice for either one, so that when you're going through and you're building out your process, you're building your content, you can think to yourself, this belongs more in task boards and this belongs more in workflows. And so we'll kind of explain the difference between the two of those today. So we'll jump in here and let me go ahead and share my screen. And the first thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be workflows. So we'll go to workflows first, then we'll talk about task boards, and then we'll jump in and we'll talk about the combination of both of those, when to use what. So the first thing we'll talk about is workflows. And what are they? Workflows are going to be your process that you have with a client when it comes to things like onboarding them, sending them material, so sending invoices out, sending out, questionnaires and proposals, and sending out contracts to clients, sending them scheduler information, any canned emails that you have. All of the content that you build into Dubsado, so like kind of what I was saying, scheduler, any forms, canned emails, if you're trying to attach payment schedules to anything, all of that is going to be along the lines of workflow. Because when you're building workflow actions, and we'll actually look at just, the basics of building an action, workflows work off of milestones. They work off the content that you have in Dubsado and milestones that happen during the course of a project, or during the course of, however you're working with the client. So we'll kind of talk about that and how the workflow recognizes more milestones, where task boards are going to recognize more fixed date options. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but let's open up just a workflow here so we can kind of talk about it. So workflows are built on a linear scale in Dubsado. So this is going to be more for this action follows this action, and then once this is completed, this happens, and then it just kind of goes in a sequential order if you're building it, in a chronological fashion. But workflows are going to be more linear, whereas task boards, it's more of different phases that you can build things in. So that's kind of a difference that you can decide between the two of those. So when you're building workflows, if we go in and we click Add Action, this is going to be all action-based. It's going to be things that the workflow triggers. So the workflow is doing this for you. That's another thing between the automation phase, which is workflow, versus task boards are going to be more manual. So when we're talking workflow, the different actions that you can do, you're telling the workflow, I want you to do this. I need this to go out, or I need this to happen at this moment. So anything where you're saying, at this moment, I need this to happen, then after this gets filled out, or once this gets paid, when you start using language that flows in that realm, that's all related to workflow, because it's all based off of your process and how you want things to get sent to the client, when you want reminders to pop up for you, all of that good stuff. So with the workflow, we're talking sending emails out, sending forms, creating internal reminders for yourself. And when you create to-dos in the workflow, that essentially, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but to-dos in the workflow can sort of replace task boards in a way. It kind of depends on what you're needing. But create to do in the workflow is going to be if you need to do anything manual. So workflows do have a manual aspect to them. It's not 100% automation, but you can add some internal reminders that will pop up for you, which can give you a little bit of a project management feel in some aspects, kind of like a hybrid. Whereas task boards, there's no automation to it. So workflows primarily is automation, which you do have the capability to add some to-dos, and then task boards are going to be 100% manual. And we'll look at those whenever we move on to task boards. So sending contracts, sending invoices out. As you can see, all of these are pretty much going to be things that the workflow is going to do for you when you put it in the right sequence. So that's going to be, when it comes to the action part of it, is things that you want the workflow to do for you. So if you're taking notes, you can write that down, that's if you're looking for something in Dubsado to do something for you, that is going to be all workflow related. Now, the other really big thing when it comes to workflows that task boards don't have is workflows is all about milestones and different points or different actions that happen during the course of the project that you want the workflow to watch to have happen. So when we click this drop down here, whenever we're building out workflow actions, this is how you can really decide if something needs to be in a task board or if it needs to be a workflow action. So if you're looking for something to look at a project start date or a project end date, and then have something fire, that's going to be 100% workflow. If you're looking for a certain form to get completed before something happens, or a payment to get made, if you're looking for them to sign a contract or after they book an appointment, different things like that where you're looking for certain milestones to happen and then you want something to fire, or before that thing happens, that's all workflow related. Let me jump over here and check out this comment. So I can make sure I answer you guys' comments here. Will we gain the ability to send the link to the portal in a workflow? Which link are you referring? Is it just a one-time link, or what type of link are you referring to? Because there is the ability to send form links or things like that. But just want to clarify on that. Where do we set the job start and end dates? That's a great question. So in the workflow, when you're talking about having it recognize these different triggers, that's all going to be project based. So in your actual project, if we go into one of these here and we can jump into a project, whatever the date of the project is, which is up here in the top left-hand corner. So if we click this here, and this is where you can set the date for the actual project. So let's say that my date it starts on the 21st, and let's say that it's going to go until the 24th. So that's the start date and the end date. So if we're talking about the triggers in the workflow, if we think about the 21st and the 24th, on a workflow level, if we jump back over there, what those dates are looking at for those triggers is going to be before or after the 21st or before or after the 24th. So that's where it can just recognize whatever the project date is and then make it happen. That's another thing about workflows, is that if you want relative triggers, so that means that no matter who you apply this to, it's going to look at their specific job date. That's all workflow related. Task boards, you're going to have to set the dates that you want things due manually. So if you are someone who I want to be able to go in and set all the dates for everything, I want to have control over everything, and when it pops up on my dashboard of when it's due, that's going to be 100% task boards. If you're looking for the automation where it recognizes job dates or it recognizes forms getting completed, that's all workflow. So that's still kind of where you get the automation and manual process, is when you're talking about dates. And we'll show you how it looks whenever we get to task boards, on how you can set due dates for things in the task area. Currently in the client portal, Dubsado allows to send a link to the portal. Can this be something added to the workflow section too? So creating a one-time link, you're not able to do that at the moment, just because the one-time links normally are specific for clients. If it's just kind of an overall general link that you want to send out, you could think about adding that link in a form. If it's kind of one that everybody that has a client portal you would like it to go to, you could think about adding that hyperlink in a form that you send out to a client, or you could add in just a template that has that in there. That would probably be the best way to maneuver around that, but typically with one-time links, they're very specific for the clients, so there's not a way to add that into a workflow, but usually in a canned email that gets sent out to the client, or a form. If you had a link that you want everybody to go to, that's kind of the best way to handle if you want something in the portal without having to create that one-time link for right now. But hopefully we can add something like that in the future into the workflows. I know the dev team is doing a ton of stuff to workflows. We've even added a bunch of stuff lately. If you guys haven't noticed, you can now archive projects with the workflow. So that's brand new. It literally just dropped yesterday. I was in the middle of a call with somebody and I was showing them how to build workflows, and I just recognized that it popped up. So it was literally in the middle of a call. So if you guys want to edit your workflows around, you can now archive projects after a certain point, which is really cool. Awesome. So that's all automation. So anytime we're talking about sending content that you have in Dubsado, that's automation, or that's workflows, and it looks at milestones. So again, workflows are built more on just a linear scale, one after another chronologically. You're just working through step by step your workflows. Now, I have seen people who do workflows in phases, which kind of is like task boards, and we'll look at that in a second. But workflows typically are just going to be your entire process top to bottom. So that's how you can kind of think about it as well. Yes, I love the new workflow action as well, because archiving a project, obviously once you're done with it, you don't want to have to manually move everything, so that will take care of it, and it can just move right into the archived bin once you're finished with that project, which is really nice. Well, that's the workflow area. Now we're just going to talk about, just kind of in a general sense, task boards. So if we go to the task section here on the left-hand side and jump over to boards, which is right here. For those of you who aren't familiar what task boards are going to give you kind of the same feel as like Trello or Asana. Not saying it's as versatile as those systems, because those are straight project management systems. Dubsado is a little bit more client management based, but we do offer some project management aspects. So it does have the same kind of feel. So you'll have to decide whenever you put together a board in Dubsado if it fits what you need. It might not, and you might have to stay in Trello or Asana if there's other features that we don't offer. But I have been on a few calls with people where what they're doing in Trello and Asana, they can easily do in Dubsado. So you just kind of have to pace it to see if what we have fits your needs. And obviously we always make updates to everything, and we're always improving things. So hopefully if you can't use these, someday you will be able to. But let's take a look at boards. And what a job board is whenever a new project comes in. So let's say you get a new client and you have the same similar to-do template that you always need to do for a client. So if you're a photographer or a web designer, and whenever you get a new client, you basically do the exact same process. You might sit down with them, and then you collect these images, and then you Photoshop them, and then you do this. That whole process, when it comes to overall just to-dos, you can build overall templates that you can apply to projects as they come in. Do you know if there are any plans to have more Zapier integrations? Yes, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but I did overhear that they are talking about not only making more Zapier videos, but also adding more Zaps as well. So that should be coming out next year sometime, where they're going to be including some more things. Because I know right now there's only 2 that you can do, but we're going to be adding more next year for sure. So that should be happening. So job boards, let's just jump into this one. I have a landing page for a website. This is just something that I threw together. It's not necessarily something that you can use as a user, but just to give you an overall feel. So as you can see, it kind of looks the exact same as like Trello, where you have your columns and your cards. You can break things up in phases. So with this is how you can also think about using job boards, is to break things out in your different phases that you want to be able to go in and to accomplish manually. So on here, With the job boards, this is more of you just going in whenever you get things done and checking off your to-dos as just an overall template. And with these job boards, if this is my process I have with a client every time they come in with things I need to get done internally, I can take this and I can just apply it to a project as it comes in, so I'm not retyping the same to-dos over and over again. So that's the biggest difference between workflows and task boards, is that task boards are just strict manual. Whenever you get something done, you just come in and you just check it off at your leisure. There's not any automation to it. It won't send anything out to the clients. It's not based off of looking at certain milestones that get completed in the project. It's 100%, you set the dates on when things are due, and then as you get them done, you can come in and just check them off. Some people love using task boards because they're very manual driven and they like to go in and just mark things off as they get them done. Totally fine, and definitely use the task boards for this. So that's kind of an overview of the task boards. It's going to be broken up into phases. Like for this, I have, 5 weeks out, I need to get this done. 3 weeks out, I need to make sure I have all of these things done. 2 weeks out, get this all finished. So that's how you can think about it, is just 100% project management. You can add it to a project and then mark things off as you go. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are the differences between the two, and all the different examples that I could come up with on kind of what separates one from the other. Some things that one has that the other doesn't, and so you guys can get a good feel about the differences. So the first one, obviously the biggest one, is automation versus manual. Anything automated is workflow, anything manual is task boards. The second thing is workflows are only internal view. So that means internally, those are the only people that can see the workflows. Clients are not able to see a workflow process at all. So you can't share a workflow in a client portal or email the workflow to anybody. The workflow is going to be only for internal use, and so a business owner or multi-users can come in and they can see what's going on with the workflow. So that's a huge thing, because with the task boards, these can be shared in the client portal with clients, and so we'll talk about that for a second. So the cool thing about task boards is that if you are someone who needs to give homework to a client, or you need to give a checklist to a client for them to mark things off, if you are someone who wants to share their task board in the client portal so that the client can just see where you're at in the process, that's all going to be with the task board, and you have the ability to share these in the client portal. And I'll show you here really quickly. When you have your task board, by clicking this down arrow up in the top right hand corner, you can choose the privacy settings for this task board. And so you can decide whether it's just the admin and assigned users that can see this. So that means it's just internal. Whenever you apply this to a project, only the people who are assigned to it and the admin can see the task board. Or you can also choose to have it shared in the client portal. And just a quick disclaimer, with the privacy settings on here, and it does say underneath here, clients will be able to edit and create and kind of assign tasks to themselves. So that's the biggest thing that you'll need to know, is if you have a task board that you don't want the client to be able to manipulate in any way, then do not share it in the client portal, because they can edit things, they can add tasks to add tasks for themselves. And the one thing I've seen people do is they might have two task boards on a project. One is just for internal use, and so that one is only for the admin and the assigned users. And then they might have a separate task board that's just for the client portal. So it doesn't matter if the client adds things, edit things, checks things off. It's just for the client to use for themselves. So you can think about doing two task boards on a project if you would like to, if you don't want the client to have access to the same board and be able to manipulate things. Sometimes you want the board to be shared, so that way you can make edits and they can make edits back and forth. So you can kind of just pace it to see which one you like or which ideas you have for it. So with this, that's a huge one with workflows versus task boards, is that you can share task boards in the client portal, and you can just do that from the privacy settings here, and they can go in, make edits and whatnot. So that's a big one. The third one we've kind of already touched on is milestones versus fixed due dates. And the workflow is going to be more along the lines of looking at forms getting completed, seeing contracts get signed, invoices being paid, and making things happen. With task boards, any tasks that you have, so let's just jump into this one here. You have to manually go in and you have to set due dates for each task if you want it to be displayed on your calendar. That's a huge thing that people will be able to manipulate what goes on their calendar and what doesn't. If your task that you have here in the task board has a due date, that shows up on your calendar. And so you can kind of decide, do I want this to be on my calendar? Is this just something I want to be reserved for in-house? You can kind of pace it to see what you like there as well. And since we're in here, I'll just kind of run through this modal here so you can kind of see the different things you can do with tasks. And hopefully this will help you decide if you can use our task boards or not. So you can set due dates for things, and this will not only show on your dashboard, it will also be on your calendar if you have a due date for something. You can decide what board this task goes on. Maybe you want to switch it to a different board or switch it to a different column. You can decide, I want to push this to 1 week out, and you can switch that up. The other thing as well that you can do, and when it comes to workflows and task boards, the multi-user function is pretty much the exact same. With to-dos in the workflow, you can assign those to multi-users. Same thing with tasks in the task boards. You can assign these to any multi-users that you have. So if you're thinking about this from a multi-user standpoint, it's pretty much the same either way, whether you're creating a task in the workflow or you're creating one in the task board area. So this just means that whoever's assigned to this, and you might see this in workflows as well, whoever's assigned to this means that that's going to be whose dashboard it goes on to. So that's all the assignee does, is this is whose dashboard it's going on to whenever it gets time for that to get done. So that's where you can do the assignee. One cool thing about the task boards is each card can have files that get attached to it, as well as comments can be made, and it timestamps it. So as you can see here, I uploaded a Word doc to this task. Same thing with comments that I need to get this done. So that multi-users can comment on this. This is kind of just internal, where it's the files and the comments can be shared. So it can you can have this kind of internally if you want to use communication that way. And you can add comments and files and things. So that's also another cool aspect of the task boards as well. So that's a big thing, is milestones versus fixed dates. That's kind of the overall thing there, is that workflows look at the different things that happen during the course of a project, and this is going to be 100%. You can come in and set a due date for something as a fixed date. So you can kind of gauge whether you want to use one or the other there for that, if you're thinking about the different tasks that you need to get done. So that's a big one. The second one is the task board is not able to send anything out to a client. So if it has anything to do with emailing a client, sending out a contract, sending out a form, anything that has to do with communication to the client, it's all going to be workflows. Task boards you can share them in the client portal, but it's not going to email them, or you can't send someone an email through task boards. That's all going to be in the workflow area. So if it has anything to do with sending something out to the client, that's 100% workflows. So if you're taking notes, you can write that one down. We have another comment here. Let me check this out. Awesome. Tagging people. I love it. Tag everybody. So the other one that's kind of, from what I've seen, workflows is going to be more of your full process written out. And then as you can see, task boards is more breaking things up into different phases. Now, obviously with the workflows, if you would like to do different phases, you can do that. But typically what I see as a workflow is just, one full process from when the moment a lead comes in throughout the process until they're done with their job. And then task boards is where you can break things up into columns and phases and that whole thing. So you can kind of think about it in that way as far as the design of both. The next thing is how you can apply these. So this adds another spin on things. So task boards have to be added manually to a project every single time. So there's not a way to automatically put these onto a project, you will need to go into the project and assign it underneath the general boards if you want it on the project. Workflows, on the other hand, can either be applied manually or automatically, and I'll talk about that here now with our lead capture forms. So with the lead capture form in Dubsado, if you guys are not familiar with this feature, there's two ways that you can start workflows on a project automatically. The first way is going to be in the settings menu. Within your lead capture form, you can apply a workflow to start right away once someone fills out a lead capture form. So if you're wanting your process to start right away, and you might be thinking of, as soon as they fill this out, I need this email to go out. Whenever you get into that language, that's 100% workflow. And so you can decide here which workflow you want to apply to this lead capture. So once they click submit, the workflow gets added to their project and then it starts running automatically. So if you guys haven't noticed, I don't know if anybody has, but the dev team actually moved the default workflow to the very top because originally you had to go down to the bottom to apply it and it was kind of hard to see. So they actually moved it to the top now, so it's really easy to apply a workflow. So just kind of some cool things that we're moving around if you guys didn't notice that. So you can apply a default workflow there, and that means that whoever fills out the lead capture form, they get the exact same workflow. So it's not based off of service, it's not based off what they're interested in, it's only everyone gets the exact same workflow as it goes. The other way you can do it is by actually asking them a question on the form that can start a particular workflow. So this workflow element on the left-hand side here, you can use this workflow element to initiate a different workflow based off of what they're interested in. So if we scroll down here, I added one in already, but it says, what service are you interested in? And I've talked to a lot of people on calls about using this feature. If you have a business that has different lanes that you want them to go down, if you have different service types, or if you have different paths that you want them to go down, this is where it will all initiate from. So in this case, let's say I'm a photographer and I have different lanes of business that I offer, different types of photography that I offer. So I might do portraits, I might also do weddings, I might, sometimes I do sporting events here and there, or I might do newborn photography. All of these different lanes that you might possibly do with your business, you can have a different workflow get applied to the project based off of which one they choose. So if they say, hey, I want to book you for a newborn photography shoot, perfect. They'll click newborn, and then they'll get a whole string of emails and forms, contracts, everything that has to do with newborn material. So you can divide things up and have things branch off and have a workflow start from a lead capture form this way. So how this ties into task boards is task boards can only be applied manually to projects. If you're looking for, once they fill out this lead capture form or once they inquire about something, I want them to already get started on a certain path, that's all workflows, and you can apply these to forms. So there is an automated way to get a workflow moving as well. So that's a big one. And then I also wrote, and we kind of just talked about it already, with the multi-users, they pretty much work the exact same. Now there is the option, and I did want to highlight this before we wrap this up here. Today's kind of a shorter one because it's not over a specific topic. It's kind of just talking about two features that we have. So the other thing that you can do, and I've seen people do this as well, and maybe this will spark some creativity for you guys, is in the workflow, I have seen people create workflows that are 100% to-dos. So every single action is a to-do, whether it's, 5 days before the job starts, I need these 5 actions to show up in bulk at this time. You can set things up that way with a workflow and make it just all to-dos from top to bottom. Then it works just like a project management tool. There's nothing that's going to be sent to the client. It's all internal. I've seen people that once they mark this to do complete, the next one pops up. And then once they mark this done, the next one pops up. And it's just after all previous actions are complete. So if you're looking for that, that's kind of taking automation and project management and meshing it together. So let's say that after the contract is signed by a client, you need to be reminded to do 5 things. What you can do in the workflow is you can have 5 different to-dos that would recognize once the contract has been signed, and then it gives you a list of those things that you need to get done. So you can potentially use workflows for your project management. I've seen people that have a project that has 2 workflows applied to it. One would be all of the things that go out to the client, so sending emails, sending contracts out to the client, all that good stuff. And then I've also seen it set up where they also have another workflow applied to the project that's all to-dos, so it's all internal. So there are a lot of different varieties that you can do, but hopefully today kind of broke down the possibilities of both, some good practices, and usually it comes back to lingo. So if you're ever saying, I just want to create a to-do list where I can just mark things off as I go, if you're kind of in that realm, that's all task boards. If you're ever saying things like, well, I want to be able to give my client an update on where I'm at in a project, or I want to give my client things that they can check off, that's also task boards. If you're using language like, once they, make a deposit, I need this to happen, or once they fill out a lead capture, I need this to happen, that's 100% workflows. So depending on what you're needing, and you can kind of think about, this is what I'm looking for, and it falls in this kind of phrasing. Once they come to my website, I want them, if they select this, I want them to go down this route. That's workflows. So the biggest thing today is just kind of helping you understand the 2 different types of features we have when it comes to project management and deciding which one works best for you. So that's kind of a rundown of everything. I didn't have a lot for today. Let's see, let me pull this back up here. So I didn't have a lot for today. It was just kind of talking about the 2 different types of features that we have for project management and the differences of both. But definitely put your comments in here if you have any. I'll come back and I'll answer some today. And then if you guys do want to see something on FAQ&A, definitely let me know and I can jot it down to talk about in the future. This will actually be the last FAQ&A of this year because Friday is our last day being in the office for the rest of the year. So the whole week of Christmas and throughout New Year's, we will be closed. So we won't be doing FAQ&As or taking one-on-one calls. So we won't be doing FAQ&A next Thursday, but the Thursday after that, which I believe is like the 3rd or 4th maybe of January, we'll be right back and doing FAQ&As and going through some things. So if you guys do want to see something, write a post in the Facebook community, write a comment in here, and I can go over it at a later time. But yeah, other than that, I hope you guys have a great Christmas. I can't believe that 2018 is already almost over, but I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are enjoying Dubsado. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. So take care, guys.